everybody? It is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome, and welcome back to a new episode of The Old, the New, and the Awesome. Well, I know it's been a while, and yes, we were on a bit of a break. There was just a ton of stuff going on, but I am actually really happy to finally be back here on my channel with this amazing group that does this with me every single time. And of course, that is my co-hosts, Kami and Stacy. Ladies, it is so great to see you both again. I hope that you are all doing well.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Steve.
And I also want to thank each and every one of you who are watching, and we hope that you have a good time. I hope you didn't miss us too much, so just in case you have something to say, please feel free to leave a like and a comment because we love to chat with you, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you're up to date with all of our latest content. So there's a lot to talk about because we have to play a nice little game of catch-up today. And especially considering the fact that we are welcoming the fall and Halloween season, we are all appropriately dressed for that, even though you guys may not be able to see it. Stacy's got a co-host with her, which is nice. I actually got my Venom t-shirt on, not just to celebrate the Halloween spirit, but to also celebrate the fact that the movie theaters had just made $90 million in an opening weekend thanks to Venom, which is a beautiful thing to know. The theaters are coming back, baby. But even though this is all positive, the world is a fucking mess. That is basically what we all agreed with in this room. And I think it is something that we really need to address, whether it's politics or natural disasters or the worsening culture war. Things are just not getting any better. Now, there are some glimmers of silver linings when it comes to a case-by-case basis, but as a collective whole, no damn way. I think the person who really wants to get this conversation started is Kami, because Kami and I have had a great deal of conversations about this off camera. So, Kami, would you be willing to take the reins here and get going with this?
Yeah, of course. You know, we all talk naturally off camera quite a bit, you know, respectively together and apart. And I think I have said it a few times, 2020 was the tip of the iceberg. I think a lot of people were just a little bit jarred by 2020, and they really weren't prepared for it. And I said to everybody that it was in my life, that was important to me, this is only the beginning. When you pull the blinders off of people and people have time to actually spend at home and they're not in an office and they're forced to see the families that they've married into and the children that they've had, and then be separated also from people that they're accustomed to seeing, their environment is going to change. And so we saw a lot of that. You know, people didn't know how to handle quarantine. They didn't know how to handle being away from a schedule, an office schedule, a purpose, and then to be placed into permanent parenthood and permanent teaching, and, you know, all of these things that people just weren't prepared for. And we've talked about it as a society for decades. You know, what if the situation should transpire where we are faced with a virus, a pandemic, something that's going to keep us, you know, from the norm, and we proved that we couldn't handle it, that we weren't prepared as a society, both societally, also with our resources. We weren't prepared to handle this. And the mental stability of a lot of people changed as well. When you are jarred and taken from a norm and forced to do something that you didn't sign up for, things change and you have to adapt. Some people adapt and overcome very well, others do not. And so coming into 21, a lot of people thought, oh, well, there's hope. And of course there's hope. That's how we live as humans. We are based on hope, that there's hope for the future. And so with a vaccine on the horizon, with changes politically, we thought, okay, this is going to be a breath of fresh air. and it has been a fucking nightmare.
It's
There
gotten
has just
worse.
been
I think it's gotten worse.
tragedy after tragedy, situation. Oh, I wouldn't disagree with you at all. I mean, where to start is kind of the thing, you know. And to look ahead, you have to look behind. And not to say that 2021 hasn't afforded us some positivity, but it has afforded us a lot of really crazy things again that we weren't prepared for. And when you come off of a year like 2020, where you're already jarred and you're not fully set up, and I mean that financially, mentally, spiritually, physically, to take on what 21 has offered us. 21 has been very hard on a lot of families. There was a huge financial setback in 2020. 21 hasn't gotten better. Prices are on the rise for gas, for food. Nothing is normal. And I really hate the word now normal, because what is normal? And I know that for a lot of people, it's, well, don't look for normal, look for better. I love the positivity. I totally get it. But as human beings, we do need a sense of normalcy. We need something that we can tangibly hold on to so we know what the future looks like. And when you are continually jarred month after month with natural disasters, political disasters, societal disasters, like, how do you get back to that space? And we're not focusing fully on us as individuals. We're still not a kind society. There's a lot of kind things happening, and you still do hear those good, you know, people stories where neighbors are helping neighbors, and, you know, things are starting to unravel in a good way. But we're still not where we had hoped to be in October. And, you know, for us, at least Stacy and I, you know, we're huge October people. I know that this October isn't normal, you know, and I'm trying to do everything in my power to make this what I know and love. But my entire year has been catapulted and weird. And every month I say, okay, next month will be better. I'm going to get back on track. I'm going to do the things that I love, but I can't get there because I don't know how. And I know I'm not the only one going through this. You know, how do you get back to what you love? And I think that things like this, where you connect with people that you know that have similar like interests, certainly helps. But everything is such a Debbie Downer. You turn on the news and it's like, shit, really? This is what's going on? So I think for a lot of people, it's just the question of how do we get back to better? How do we hold on to the hope? And I think that really just sets within yourself. You know, you have to start setting mind goals for yourself, physical goals for yourself. And I think that's what I've been doing for me. But a lot of the things that we find joy in then become chores. You know, like my reading has declined significantly. Am I still reading? Yes, of course. Am I still watching movies? Absolutely. But not at the rate that I was before 2020. And I would like to think that in some way, shape, or form, we're going to get back there. But I think the question of how do we do this is weighing heavy on a lot of people. And sadly, the financial situation for many is not getting better. The political climate is not getting better. Natural disasters are happening at such an incredible rate. You know, I think that for a lot of people that are very religious, they're looking to, you know, Revelations and Armageddon and the end of days. And of course, this happens generation after generation, but you kind of have to ask yourself, what the hell is going on? And when are we going to get some answers? And I just don't see a clear picture through the fog right now. And I think that is the case for many people.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we're in a waiting pattern. You know, like we're on the plane and we're just kind of taxiing around waiting, and we don't even know if the plane is going to take off or not. It's just, it's hard to plan things. It's hard to, you know, like things with travel. And I just went to a concert last night. It's the last concert I'm going to be going to this specific venue because of the mandates that they're putting in place in a few days. It was the last concert where a person like me will be allowed to go. So it's like being able to plan things for the future is so difficult, because even if things are in a sense, open and normal right now. You don't know what that's going to look like in, a few months, a year, 2 years. And then with the prices of everything, again, that makes it hard to plan because, like I was just telling you, we bought this new property and it's a fixer-upper and it's going to cost a lot of money, and materials for housing has skyrocketed. Wood is astronomical right now. The price of gas has skyrocketed. Food has skyrocketed. So again, it makes it hard to plan anything to do with money. Like, oh, if I save this amount of money for this amount of time, I'll have this much. Well, who knows? Because the price of everything is going up. And what does that look like a year from now? So yeah, I just feel like we're in this shitty waiting period of not knowing what to expect. And I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just like, I'll take us back to May. And in May 2021, I was feeling extremely positive about a lot of things outside of politics, because I'm just going to boldly say this. It doesn't matter if you're happy about the fact that we got a new president at the end of 2020, but I will just say he has not done a better job than the previous president, and that's where I'm going to stay with that. The problem with these politicians right now is the fact that they keep saying there's a problem, there's a problem, there's a problem, but you're not coming to the necessary powers with a solution to that problem. You are just constantly saying there's a problem. And the other thing is, you're not willing to listen to the people in the room. You're saying, here's my solution, and this is how you're going to do it, regardless of how you feel about it. Well, that's why politicians right now in the Senate and the House are at a standstill with this infrastructure bill. I don't want to get into any full details, otherwise I'm going to definitely trail off. But back to May 2021. I was fully vaccinated. Summer was coming, which means my wife was off for the summer. We got together with some friends, finally in person. It was great to see people. I got to hug my family members, see my nieces. We got to visit my wife's parents. In July, we went back to the movies to see the first Marvel movie in theaters, and we went to see a few movies after that. We'll talk about those in the coming couple of minutes. It was feeling really great. Yes, I was still wearing a mask in some places. Yes, I was still being very cautious, but it was starting to feel really good. And then one of the most amazing things that happened to me this year was I turned 40 on August 28th, and I had one of my most amazing birthdays ever. It was nothing fancy for a big landmark. The one thing that made me very upset was the fact that we had Tropical Storm Henri remnants come through on the weekend that I was supposed to celebrate my 5-year wedding anniversary with my parents' wedding anniversary, because it's the same day. So we were all going to have a nice late lunch, early dinner, and it got ruined. We didn't end up seeing each other. So it is what it is. But the fact that my wife and a good friend of mine, we went into New York City. We went to all the fun little tourist areas like the Disney store and the Nintendo store and just all the fun little shops. It was a beautiful day weather-wise. We had an amazing time. And then we went back to where we lived. We got together with my friend's wife, and all 4 of us went out to a wonderful dinner and topped it off with some ice cream at one of our favorite community ice cream places. It was a dream come true. It was everything I wanted. I was so excited for the rest of the year. And then Hurricane Ida came along, and we ended up getting water in our basement on September 1st. And I was crushed. That's the reason why I'm recording now in my living room. The funny thing is, I'm actually recording with my DVD collection right behind me still in some shape or form, so I actually kind of find that humorous, and I appreciate the fact that Kami is laughing. But everything that we were planning for the rest of this year and for 2022, we now have to juggle it all over again because of the fact that this stupid little thing took place. And now it's just making things more hard to deal with. But no, everything that you both have said, I agree with you both. And once again, I'm just sick and tired of turning on the news and hearing all these people just prophesizing about gloom and doom and addressing problem after problem after problem, and all they want to do is hype up these problems. I mean, we know we have problems in this country. We know there are problems all over the world. I found it really funny that the news was all up in arms about people and their mental health only after Simone Biles decided to step down from a couple of Olympics events. You know, it shouldn't take an athlete to cause people to finally say, okay, we need to start addressing the issue with mental health in this country. There are people getting shot in big city streets, and half the time some of these are not necessarily gang related. They are dealing with people who have trouble in their minds, and they're not being helped. There's a serious situation in this country right now with all of these matters, and I just don't understand why nobody is trying to properly address and try to fix.
Although that is a situation that we do need to tackle and needs attention and in its own right is a completely separate subject, we have a bigger issue that a lot of people are ignoring right now, and that is the homeless population and transient population in our country.
That is correct.
Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Portland, Oregon, there's a lot of regions of very prominent cities that have such a huge homeless population that are infiltrating the cities and causing unnecessary violence, theft, rioting, stealing. You just don't recognize some of these cities, and they're in America. And when you actually get a visual on the way they look and the way these communities have developed within these downtown areas, it is quite scary. And we are not addressing that as a nation. We are not televising this. We are not talking about this, because far be it from anyone to continue to harp on politics, but the political shit show has only begun, because there is going to be a race for the Senate seats in 2022. And, as many Democratic politicians want to call it, the Trumpsters or the Trump era haze is still over a great number of people in this country, and people are still upset about the presidential election and the outcome. But really it comes down to a complete distrust in the voting system in our country. And so people that genuinely felt robbed really just want answers, and we have not gotten any answers in the way we vote in this country. There has been numerous tests that have been done on these voting machines that we use in our country, and it has been cited many times that there's errors, that there's many issues with these machines, and yet we put our faith into these, and we post that we are going to continue to utilize these for future elections, full well knowing the areas of issue that we're going to face in 22, where there will be a need to recapture the House and the Senate seats that Republicans lost. And so if there's no faith in the voting system, it doesn't really make a difference whether or not we're pushing for all these voting laws. There's an issue at hand that we're not focusing on, and that's the American people. We don't trust our politicians. We don't trust in the system. And if you don't trust in the system, you're going to continue to have unrest. You're going to continue to have rioting. You're going to continue to have these battles in the street, and we're not focused on it. Just because the cities aren't on fire doesn't mean the people aren't pissed. It doesn't mean that we aren't trusting the process. I don't understand why there is so much bullshit. And I mean, you can look at generations before. You can talk to people who grew up in the 60s and the 70s. Hell, you could go back further than that if you know people of those generations, and they will all tell you of unrest. They will all tell you, after the Vietnam War, we had similar ideologies. We had similar unrest and riots and conversations and fighting in the streets.
And you didn't trust your political figures because Nixon was caught and he resigned.
So this has been going on for generations. This is nothing new, but I think that because technology is so vast and because people have all of these devices, everyone feels like they have a voice and they have words to say. And so we have become such a fighting society, and not in a good way. It's not like people want to fight to make a difference in every case. I mean, you do still have your parties and your platforms, organizations that fight for the good, that do things the right way, that, you know, get these political protests together and picket and signs and all of these things. But then you have so many people that just insinuate hate and evil and throw it out there with no factual evidence to back it up. And so you have this division that's still a huge gap between a lot of areas, a lot of regions in our society. And then all of these problems, and you know, if you look at it on a big scale, yes, these issues are minute in terms of international relations, because God forbid anybody should talk about what the fuck's going on in Afghanistan and China and, you know, all of these other countries that are unrest, Australia, Italy. God forbid we should be talking about these things that do affect America, but we can't fix home. And then yet we expect the world to look at America as this fucking super country that just has its shit together when we are a literal shitstorm. You know?
And I will, I got to cut you off, Kami, because I just want to add this fact. Please let me know if I'm right or wrong on this. I will still say, you know, that's another one of the major problems that I want to piggyback on. I love using that term. You brought it to the forefront. Another one of the issues that we have right now is because of the fact that people are relying more on social media for all these issues, is because they don't trust the media. And the problem is the media has been bought out by corporations, and all they care about is ratings and making money, which was the biggest mistake that occurred in the 1990s. However, they're not necessarily hiding what they did a lot more so during the Trump administration, because when I watched the regular NBC nightly news, they are to a certain degree, let me just say that they are sugarcoating it, I can tell, but they are talking about the fact that Biden is not perfect. They're showing the border crisis. They're showing what happened in Afghanistan. They're constantly talking about inflation. It's also nice to see that they're finally talking about the political infighting that's going on in the Democratic Party. It's about fucking time that they did that. They're saying this morning that amongst independent voters, Biden's numbers have dropped tremendously in the polls. So as far as I'm concerned, between mayoral elections coming up in this year, as well as some gubernatorial elections that are coming up in this year, I truthfully feel that the blinders have come off. And like you had said before, Kami, 2020 was a wake-up call. Well, now I think the wake-up call is not letting you hit the snooze button. We're starting to see a lot more outside of the social areas and more so on the political and the economics. Because going back to 6th grade social studies, what are the 3 important things that make a society work? It's your politics, it's your economics, and it's your social issues. We're now officially seeing all 3 of those things in the media, more so in certain areas than others, in regards to these 3 things. And now the American people are seeing all 3 of these matters are not good. And now it's up to the people to make the choice as well. Do you want things to remain the status quo? Or do you want to make a change? So I don't want to be the great Karnak here. Here's me testing my age here. If you guys got that reference, I appreciate that. But I personally feel that Republican and conservative candidates are going to have a much louder voice right now in this country. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of Democratic seats were lost in the next couple of years in regards to some of these recent elections that are coming out right now. Because the American people are concerned about not just COVID, they're concerned about their own economic, personal well-being right now. And people are sick and tired of these politicians fighting like first graders on a playground, regardless of what political parties are fighting, and not getting shit done. Kami, please continue.
Well, and really that's kind of what it boils down to, is I think that for an odd reason in this country, and maybe I'm more cognizant of it because I have a sister who's 8 years younger than I, but there seems to be a huge generational gap between my generation and her generation, and that's only like 10 years. I mean, if we want to be realistic, those of us that were born in the 80s and those that were born in the 90s. And maybe, again, this is something that's been happening for generations. You get those kids that grow up, and now here we are in our 40s. And so we're viewing the world in a different way. But those kids that are 30, and I know it's weird to call them kids because, you know, I always see my kid sister as my kid sister.
Yeah.
But those 30-year-olds see us as the outdated ones, that we do things the old school way and that we don't understand the modern times. But what they don't get is that they weren't the first generation to have computers in their classroom. They weren't the first generation to have cell phones in their hand. We were. That was us. And far be it from them to just blow it off like, oh, you guys are old and outdated and you don't understand. No, we set it up for you kids. It just became more technological for you all, and you guys had it all the damn time, and that's the problem. You never went outside to get fresh air. So maybe you need to come up for some oxygen. We went outside. We still played till the sun went down. You know, maybe we scraped our elbows. You know, we didn't play video games for 20 hours. That came in our adult years. But my point is that we are not old, we are not outdated, but we are adults living in an economic crisis. And no matter how anybody wants to slice it, we are in an economic crisis. When gas prices are on the rise, when food prices are on the rise, but let's also talk about food shortages. We are in a huge food shortage in the country. And
lots of other shortages too.
About that either. Bullshit that the pandemic has cleared the shelves. We're past that quarantine phase. They're panic buying toilet paper again. They're panic buying Lysol again. They're panic buying canned goods again. My point is we're not through this. And as a society, if just our generation and that other generation that we're side by side with can't see eye to eye, we are truly a society that is in big, dire straits. And if we don't get it together, I'm really fearful for the future of this country. And we are in a constant political shit show where you nailed it. It's a bunch of fucking first graders going at it with each other for some title. But we, as the American people who have the blinders pulled off, the wool has been completely taken from us. We don't see this as a red and blue thing anymore. So many of us, I feel, have come into this now as independents. We are now just looking for somebody to just be a superhero and save the day and have some common sense.
Yes, just do something.
Please change the pattern.
Exactly.
And I really feel that that's what we're looking for as a people. It's no longer going to the polls to vote straight party, or I support the Republicans, I support the Democrats. It's I support anybody with some common fucking sense who wants to get this show on the road.
Yep.
And I think a lot of that, you know, I really think that it's beyond just the political side of things. I think we're looking at a lot of things that are structured format. I'm even seeing a lot of this now in religion, believe it or not. And I know this is the second time I brought up religion, but religion is very heavy right now across the board, because when there's a heaviness in the air, people start to really find their God. They really start to say, okay, what's happening? What's the future hold? Tomorrow isn't promised, so how do I want to go out? How do I want to save myself and my family? So however they see their God, however they see their faith, people are not looking to structured religion as much as they used to. They're really just looking for that spirituality, that faith-based, independent learning. So there is a lot of change, there's a lot of shift going on, and with all of this change and shift, we're not looking at the norm. And so I go back to your point, Steve, of we have a society of people who rely on social media as their intake of news, and you have this news outlet that has been completely outdated for multiple generations, is very much bought off. A lot of people don't understand how corporate the media is and how one-sided and one-dimensional it is. That's why I left journalism so many years ago, because I knew how the game was played. And I say it with all intents and purposes, it is a game. You are told by your boss, this is what you're going to do. This is your spin. This is how you're going to write the story. There is no such thing as independent journalism. You want to be a rogue journalist, you were told, good, go overseas, because there's lots of stories overseas that you can write like that, because there's no rules and regulations. If you want to be here, if you want to work here, we have a certain way of doing things. So I guess in all of this madness, that really is my point, is that there's no structure anymore. There are no
That's
rules.
right.
We are basically kind of starting from a ground zero. But what does that mean? Who are we following? And if it's a bunch of individuals kind of creating this idea that I'm going to be rogue and do my own thing, we're in a world of hurt for 2022. It's not going to get better. We've got 3 months left on this year. I don't see this spring of flowers coming out in 22 either. So I think that we still have a rough road ahead of us, and I think we need to buckle down and get ready for it, because this is still just the tip of the iceberg.
I think you're right. I really do feel that we are very much not out of the woods. I mean, granted, the whole thing that's been going on with the Delta variant, the numbers seem to be dropping, which is good, but it's all just a matter of time before, hey, guess what? A new variant is here. Let's worry about that. And guess what, everybody? This one is immune to the vaccines. You know, that's all we need right now. But also, I also appreciate the fact that you talked a little bit more about shortages, because you're right, the news wasn't covering all of this stuff. I have been finding out so much about shortages of things thanks to just a couple of recent weeks with the natural disasters. Like, we were talking to some neighbors who are also dealing with some issues because of the floodwaters. And they've been saying that for what we need to do, these companies are saying, yeah, you have to wait till April, or you have to wait till June of 2022 because we don't have the materials. I didn't know there was a paper shortage until the comic book community of YouTube started talking about all of these comic book titles that were being pushed a couple of weeks because the comic book companies didn't have the paper. I didn't know about that. I'm like, well, when was the news going to tell me about this? And it's like, some of me is kind of excited about the fact that there's a fourth Matrix movie coming out at the end of this year, because people need to remind themselves this is why we shouldn't be relying on technology, and yet we keep seeing all of these new robots and drones. I'm like, oh my God, did anyone not even listen? Forget about an inconvenient truth from Al Gore. The Terminator and Matrix, did you not pay attention? These machines are not dumb. Yes, they are made by man, but AI can evolve too. But that's me just being the fanboy sicko that I am. And another thing, because I do want Stacy to throw in more information if she's got, outside of the greatest generation, which is the generation that fought in World War II, I will still say that 1981 is the last year of Generation X. All three of us, we're part of the second greatest generation in this country. End of story. We are really the last free-thinking generation, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe the new quote-unquote Zennials, which are not really millennials, because I do agree with a lot of people born from 1982 to 1989, no, they're not millennials. I don't agree with that. They are definitely something else.
I feel bad for that generation, though, because I think something that falls on deaf ears a lot in our society is the fact that the kids that were born from 1990 on are latchkey kids. Those were the kids that were subjected to dual income families where the mom and the dad were forced to work, sometimes multiple jobs. So they were basically raising themselves. This was also a time where technology was being introduced into the home. So you had, your Apple computers that were coming in, you still had your IBMs and your Macintosh, but Apple was really being pushed into the home. That's when you had those colored monitors that, the bright pinks, and the one that I never got that I'm still bitter about.
1999.
Those came in 97.
1999.
Oh, was it 99?
It was I'm pretty certain it was 1999.
Okay.
The iMac.
My point is that generation is a very unique generation. Although they seem to be very immature, understand they're probably one of the stronger generations that don't get credit for their strength, and it's a weak strength. And the reason I say this is because when you are raised without parents that were, I'm sure like most of us, we had at least one parent in the home
That is correct.
was making sure we did our homework, that made sure we got good rest before
Well,
a test.
yeah,
Sure
Stacy, I see Stacy shaking her head. She is a rare bird.
In this situation, Stacy is, yes, our rare bird. I know that she had, some issues of her own that, is not my place to discuss. But for the most part, the kids that were born in the 80s, we had at least one parent that was home. So we weren't the latchkey kids. So this second generation of those kids born after 1990 that were the latchkey kids, that were dependent on making sure they did their own homework, that they got rest, that they were, fed before they went to sleep. It's a different dynamic of being raised. And so when you take that out into the workforce, they also didn't have the same setup that we had going in. So therefore, they are under that same mindset that they had to work one or two jobs just to make it, on top of having astronomical student debt. Because remember, the generation after us, those kids that were born in 1990, college was all the rage.
Yep.
And American education is not cheap.
Nope.
So they have this unsurmountable debt that they need to pay off. And I'll be damned, living wage or not, whether you agree with this shit, which that's a whole other can of worms and a conversation for another day. But how the hell are you supposed to pay off this student debt, be expected to have this mindset and mentality of the younger generation of, oh, well, I still need to meet Prince Charming or Princess Charming or, whatever it is that, and have 2.2 kids in a house. The American dream was lost in that generation. How can most people even afford a home these days? The housing market was ridiculous this summer.
Yep.
Houses were through the freaking roof.
Yep.
How anybody is making it these days is just beyond comprehension to me. So my heart does go out to them, because they are a unique generation where they are accustomed to working these really random part-time jobs, and they will work 3, 4, 5 of these things just to make ends meet while paying off that hefty student debt. They don't have the American dream of home ownership by a certain age like we did. They don't have the dream of getting married and having children, because how the fuck can they afford it? And then on top of that, they live in a clusterfuck of a world. So I do understand their frustration. I do understand their anxiety. And I do understand why mental health is so crazy in this world, because how do you expect to send someone like that into the world with the expectation of, well, we gave you a 4-year college degree, buck up, kid, you're going to make it, when most people after school wouldn't hire them because they had no real world experience. Like, we're such a crazy country. A lot of the things that we do don't make a lot of sense. And let's fast forward to this administration. It doesn't matter how screwed up this administration is. We can look back on administration after administration before this Biden administration. We haven't done anything to save the current society. So
that's very true.
If you just keep piling it on, this is why we're here, because we haven't fixed anything. We haven't helped people. We haven't looked at student debt. We haven't looked at the housing market. We haven't recovered ever. So I mean, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. I'm trying to remain as positive as possible.
Kami, you're
but
right.
I have to be realistic.
You're right. They just keep putting Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid, but they're not doing the open heart surgery to actually fix the problem.
Now, I think we all know at this point that I'm the biggest conspiracy theorist there is around here, and my tinfoil hat is huge. But my belief is there is no plan to fix it. There is no plan to make it better. The plan is to break society, to recreate the society that they want, which ultimately is communism.
Yeah.
The whole Build Back Better situation that all the world leaders keep talking about, and they say things like, no one will own anything and they will be happy about it. They don't want us to own houses. They don't want us to have families. They don't want us to have our religion. They want to strip us of all of these things that make us individuals, and they want to make us the collective that works for the government. Basically, it's 1984 is what it is, and that's the ultimate goal. So the globalists are, creating all these situations all over the world, setting all these fires to break the society so they can, reemerge with their Build Back Better agenda. So yeah, that's my thinking. It's not going to get better. It's just going to continue getting worse until it's all broken, and then we're, stuck with what they give us.
It's going to continue to get worse unless somebody or a group of people truly does step up. And unfortunately, the only way for that to actually happen is for people to do the American thing and go to the voting booth. That's really what it is. I think
But
that's
our
the
system's
only.
broken.
I
So
know.
like with California, does anybody actually think that Newsom won the re-election? Like, there's no way.
I personally think that he did, just because of the fact that, again, I know who Larry Elder is. I watch him on Fox News a lot. I do. I just don't think that he was the person that was going to be the right fit. I think there needed to be a different person. That's just me. Look, if I lived in California, I was going to give my vote to Caitlyn Jenner. I would. I really would
have been better than Newsom. I mean, he already gave you broken California. Why wouldn't people vote differently?
The truth of the matter is, Stacy, is just because it is so close to the actual re-election, I just don't think it would have made a difference. Because because here's the thing, let's say that the things were tipped in our favor and Newsom actually did lose. Okay, let's say that actually happened. Glory, hallelujah. But then the gubernatorial race is going to happen no matter what. So then people are going to literally have to vote again. A similar thing is literally taking place right now in New York. Not the exact same thing, but a very similar thing, okay? Cuomo's out. Thank God. But Kathy Hochul is now our governor. The gubernatorial race is a year away. And she does not have that much time left on this seat unless people vote her out. And right now, I don't really think she's doing great or if she's doing terrible. But basically, it doesn't matter. People are watching her no matter what. They are.
Voting doesn't matter. Just like my state, my governor is up for election in November. And my governor of Virginia his nickname is Blackface.
I know.
Because in college, his college photos in the yearbook, he's wearing blackface, standing next to his best friend who's wearing a KKK outfit. He is our Democratic governor in Virginia.
Because of the younger generations in this country, they all want people to be equal and they want people to be happy, and there's nothing wrong with people wanting others to live a good life and be happy.
Why vote for blackface? Why vote for the guy who wore blackface next to the KKK guy? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense, Stacy, but the problem is because they truthfully feel that the other side of the table, the conservatives and the Republicans, are so much worse for them, regardless of whether or not a Democratic person wore blackface or not. Because when they think of a conservative, when they think of a Republican, what do they think? They think anti-abortion. They think no legalization of marijuana. They think of this and they think of that. And they say the Democrats don't swing that way. So it's like, we want these things because we know that those are the
openly racist, openly on their face racist, and that's totally cool.
Woody said it best on Toy Story, if the boot fits.
But that leads us back to the conversation that a lot of people are having right now about our educational system and teaching systemic racism, and nobody wants to do that either, because we're afraid to talk about the 13 colonial states that this nation was founded on are still very much racist. And there are racist principles that run throughout, and the governor system, the Senate system, it's all the attaboys. It's all and who you know that will get you into office. So like Stacy's saying, it doesn't make a difference how you vote. It doesn't make a difference if you show up to vote. We already have a crack in our voting system. We already have a lack of faith in our voting system. Even this introduction of mail-in ballots is bullshit, because we know that that can be cheated as well.
Not disagreeing.
And aside
You
from
made
the
my cool
presidential
shot.
election, it doesn't make a difference. All the revotes and recounting that we've just done in the last few months. My point is, you have American people that have no faith in the system, but yet we have blatant racism that happens in our face every day, and these men end up in office, and it just blows my mind that if you look back on it, it's who they knew that got them there, and this isn't going to change. And it always takes me back, far be it from me to be the child in the room, but my favorite story of all time was Dr. Seuss's The Lorax, and I repeat this repetitively: unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And it does start with the person. I say this all the time, but how do you fix a broken system? You start with change within yourself. And if you just break away from social media, if you break away from stereotypes, sometimes it's even as simple as breaking away from the way you were raised and be a free thinker. Think outside the box, do your own research, read a book. For Christ's sakes, read something palatable, read something by someone that you don't like. You would be amazed how many things that I've learned by reading of the enemy. I love to find books written by either autobiographical, nonfiction books written by people that I don't have the same ideologies or principles or ideals as them, because I like to see the other side. I like to think how they're thinking.
Yes.
I want to know why they think the way that they think, because it makes me a better thinker. It's like, okay, you can't go into a boxing ring without preparing for the match. So why the fuck would you show up to a political debate or political conversation or a societal conversation without doing that legwork? We've got to better equip ourselves to be better human beings. And I preach this all the time, and I get such shit on social media for it, because you're like, oh, well, you can't be kind these days. Yes, you can. You can be kind, and you can have a difference of opinion, and you can disagree with me, and we can still be friends. And we need to get back to that, because we are never going to heal as a society if we don't get back to the basics of compassion, of kindness, of understanding, of being able to view the other side of things, being able to understand someone else's point of view, cultural background, societal setbacks, cultural differences. This is how humans are made. We're different, and we need to express our differences. We need to embrace our differences, and we need to embrace our fellow man's differences. We need to stop trying to carbon copy ourselves and make everybody out to be just like we are and think like we think and dress like we dress, because that is not what you recreate a society as. You recreate a society based on differences, because the differences are going to make the change. They're going to include everybody. And I really feel like we're so off base from that right now.
Personally, I don't really want to take any more time in regards to this topic, because there's so much more that we can talk about, and that's great. But my conclusion about all of this is I'm just going to sit back and I'm just going to watch those idiots on Capitol Hill make fools of themselves and literally watch the system implode in the next 2 weeks. Because unless these idiots get their heads out of their asses, and when I mean idiots, I mean every single goddamn one of them, we're all going to look like we're the smartest people in the room when we watch these morons just play a massive game of tug of war with each other. And I don't know about you guys, but I swear to God, somebody, I'm going to call this right now. I seriously think a fist fight is going to break out in one of those buildings. I seriously believe that some of those guys are going to really get down and dirty with each other. And it is going to really be the thing that we all need to see happen, because then we're all going to just take a step back and say, what the fuck are we doing? Like, what is this? What are we looking at here? We really need these people to just show us just how moronic they are right now. And we all need to realize that this is who is running our country. We can do better. We really, really can. Now let's get into the fun stuff. I actually wanted to talk about something that social media is somewhat useful for. And I don't know if Stacy really has anything to contribute, but I really want to know your thoughts, Kami, because we never really touched upon this. Over the summer, a big announcement, thanks to social media, was given to us from Funko when FunCon was actually taking place towards the early portion of August. The CEO of the company, Brian Mariotti, who pretty much made Funko the true household name that it is now officially stepping down as CEO, and the current president of the company is going to be taking over as the CEO. Now, because of the fact that you and I have watched Making Fun, the story of Funko, numerous times that we could probably count on both hands, I know who's taking over. And that guy seems to be someone who really appreciates this company for what it is and wants to continue the legacy that Brian and Mike Becker left behind. It's great to know that the two of them are still going to be a big part of the Funko team. But I really wanted to know, because I don't think we ever talked about this in greater detail. How do you feel about this?
I'm excited, but I think Funko needs to take a real hard look at their company right now and scale it back a notch. I think that Funko got really caught up with this idea that people were shopping from home, and so they just pushed out the product in 2020, and we've seen no setback in 21. But the product is not the same quality. I think that one of the things that drew me to Funko initially was the care and the detail in the product and the amount of product availability. As a collector, you want something that you're going to invest in to show you some kind of reward in the end. And so by placing a cap on a product where you only market, say, 10,000 of one piece or 5,000 of one piece, and you never make that mold again, as a collector, that makes it valuable, because you know that some of those, say 5,000 pieces are going to get damaged in someone's house or not make it in shipping, so that lessens the number, thus making your product more valuable. I don't have to touch on that. As a collector, you understand that process. However, if you're going to sell me something in 2015 and then you're going to redistribute it in 2022, what are you telling me as a collector? That you don't value me because you're just going to make the mold because you own the mold and you can do whatever the hell you want. I can also tell you that one of the lines that I was so excited about, the Alice in Wonderland line, to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the release of the Walt Disney film, I was so happy. That was the first time that I had ever instantly purchased something, not caring how long it took to get to me. So I purchased these back in February. They're barely rolling out now. Target made a mistake and they had sent some of the entire collections to some Targets nationwide. So some people got all of them in one sitting. Me, who pre-ordered in freaking February, I won't get all of my collection until 2022. And every single Alice piece that I've gotten so far, with the exception of the giant Cheshire cat that I purchased in person at Walmart, has been fucked up. The paint is wrong. The molds are shoddy. So my area of issue is you can be a multi-million-dollar company. Hell, I own stock in Funko. I obviously believe in the company.
I do too.
But my issue is don't sell me a product half-assed because you've reached this other level now. Have some basic understanding that Funko started on a principle. They started on an idea, and the only person that really holds that understanding in that heart is Mike Becker. And he really did pass that torch off to Brian Mariotti. I don't think Brian had the same heart and passion for Funko that Mike did. He had a business passion, and he obviously catapulted Funko to where it is today. But we need to scale it back to that small, simple-minded idea that Mike had and stop using this as a market to make money. I get that it's a business, but as a collector, I'm really put off right now. And there's probably about 10 items that got released on a pre-order last week that I was really excited about, but I haven't pre-ordered them because of my disappointment in the Alice wave. I don't see the same type of enthusiasm as a collector in myself that I did before. And I was really upset to see some of the horror pops being re-released in 22 that I was told were never going to surface again. So that just means that now my pops are for shit. They're not worth anything because they're just going to reissue them. So in all that, Steve, I love Funko. I'm a Funko collector. I'm 800 and I think I'm 880 deep now.
Wow.
But in any event, I'm at the end of my collecting because I'm really disappointed in production. I honestly thought I was going to hit 1,000 by the end of 21, and I don't think that's going to happen because I find myself, I'll get something and I'm like, the quality is shit, and I just want to get rid of it or send it back to the manufacturer.
Yeah, I'm still not even at 375 yet on my own personal collection. And that's not counting. I mean, right now, my entire Funko collection is over that mark, but not the Funko Pops per se. You were talking about things that are limited pieces. I think that is why Funko Soda has gone through the freaking roof. So many people are interested in Funko Soda because of the fact that every single one of those soda figures is made in a limited batch. So that's the part that people really, really like about that. But I'm not going to disagree with you there. I mean, also, fun fact, remember I told you about that one Funko Pop that was sent to me and it was a bobblehead and its head was loose? And you said to me that you will get me a new one. Well, I found one and now I have one with its head on straight. So I have a new one. So yeah, my flying Hot Topic exclusive Rogue is now officially 100% fine and she has her head intact. And I'm very glad about that. But I will not disagree with you. My Funko purchasing has dropped tremendously. But on a positive note, it means that it's fitting in much more with the mentality that I came into Funko with in the very beginning. And that was, do not go and take every single Funko Pop you see off the shelf and put it in your shopping cart. Look for the ones that really means something to you, something that really sends sentimental value. Kami, please hold that thought, please, please, please. Because when I take a look at the fact that whenever a new episode of Marvel's What If from Disney Plus comes out, and then they release another wave of What If Pops, I'm like, how many of these did you damn people make? Like, seriously? Do you really think that people are gonna buy all of these What If Pops? I doubt it.
Well, someone like me, though, who is a pop culture junkie, that was the mentality that I went into this with because, mind you, I was a late collector. I didn't start collecting until late 2014.
Right.
And so at that point, Funko had been out for a few years.
Yes.
So coming into this, I thought, oh, well, I'm just going to collect Star Wars. And that's where, my first gift was the Batman. I didn't even intend to expand on Batman because I knew the line of DC was insane.
Yes.
So I chose to focus on Star Wars and then a little bit of Disney, and then that just exploded. When they started coming out with all the retro toys and stuff like that, that spoke to my heart because I am a pop culture junkie. So the idea behind the marketing was spot on. Funko knew if we create a product that speaks to you in such a way, there's going to be a Funko Pop for everybody. And then, of course, the sports line. And, I could go on and on. So my intent was never to be I got to have it all. It was just, I got to have what works for me. And it ended up getting to that number. It was never about over collecting. It was just what works in terms of what speaks to who I am as a person. So obviously my horror collection is very expansive. My Disney collection is very expansive. I finally did get the Batman ones that I wanted. So my point in all this is I'm understanding in those people that want it all because to them it's like a number. It's a weird thing. For me, I scaled back on that a long time ago because I have been collecting for multiple decades and I understand there's only so much space for all of this stuff,
Yeah.
But my area of issue isn't how much they're creating, it's the quality of the product that they're creating because they have so many manufacturers now, they're not able to scale in and hone in and make sure that what's going out to their customers is exemplary.
Yeah,
that's
like,
where I think Funko was failing.
yeah, I want to give two examples. One of the recent two lines that they made was they just announced the line of the new MCU movie that's coming out in November, Eternals, and they released about 15 of them. Now, first of all, I don't know why, because I don't think these pops are going to sell. I really do not. I don't know why you have to make so many of them. Now, a line that was just announced just a few days ago, literally on Friday, was the Ghostbusters Afterlife series. Now, I'm very excited to see that movie. I think it's going to be a fun movie, but they made like 12 little Saint Puff Marshmallow Men, and there's a bunch of them in exclusives. Like they're going to have the very first Baskin Robbins exclusive in a long time. I don't think people are going to want to collect all of those. Truthfully, I don't think people are going to want to collect that set at all. However, a couple of weeks ago, there was a big buzz over a specific day that Funko gave us, and that was Retro Cartoon Day. And what did they release that day? Dexter's Laboratory, Cow and Chicken, Powdered Toast Man from Ren and Stimpy, the one that I actually did not know I was even going to put in my shopping cart, but the minute I showed my wife that they were coming out, she says, I want it. She wanted Blue from Blue's Clues. She loves Blue. So the fact that that was a much smaller wave of pops, but everyone was over the moon for them. Why is that? Because that's what Funko is all about, or at least that's what they're supposed to be about. It's supposed to be about the nostalgia. It's supposed to be about the things that people loved when they were kids. There was a soda figure that was announced in that wave that made me so excited, and I had to literally go on all of these Funko Pop themed videos because they didn't know who Roger Ramjet was. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be fun. Roger Ramjet, created by Jay Ward, who gave us Rocky and Bullwinkle, Dudley Do-Right, George of the Jungle. I'm like, you want to talk retro cartoons? Roger Ramjet, that's a retro cartoon. He was even on Boomerang when Boomerang was first released on cable. So if you want to talk about something that really tugs at your heartstrings, that's what it is. But that's also what I feel really bad about when it comes to Funko, because when you take a look at those cons, those limited pieces are always those old cartoons, whether it's a cartoon like Roger Ramjet or a classic Hanna-Barbera cartoon like Wacky Races. They're limited because they believe that the massive amount of their market is not going to buy it because they don't know what it is. And that's one of the main reasons why one of the things that I personally do is I like to collect Funko Pops that are based on retro cartoons. And when I mean retro, I mean 50s, 60s. That's why I have Rocky and Bullwinkle. That's why I have the Jetsons. That's why I have Popeye and Felix the Cat and Gossamer and Michigan J. Frog from the Looney Tunes and Quick Draw McGraw disguised as El Kabong, because those are the true retro cartoons. Those are the cartoons that should not be forgotten, because that is why all these people have Steven Universe. People need to understand that, and these are the things that really need to be preserved. And that's why when I constantly look at a new Funko Pop line that's coming out, I am almost always disappointed. I'm like, yeah, I don't want this. Like when they finally announced The Sword and the Stone, I was so giddy. I could finally get Merlin and Archimedes. When they announced Batman Day, the fact that they celebrated with an exclusive of the Bruce Timm version of Batman Beyond. I loved that show when I was a teenager. I had to get that one because that's where my nostalgia is. Stacy, I know you have your share of Funko Pops. Do you feel the same way about what Kami and I are talking about?
I don't know what the quality is like now, because I think the last Funko I bought was probably a year ago. I think maybe Edgar Allan Poe might have been the last one I bought.
That's a good one.
So I don't know about the quality, but I would agree if I were collecting them, or even if I was just buying them for the fun of it, just to put on my shelf, I would want the quality to be good and not shitty. So that makes a lot of sense to me. It makes me sad that it's going downhill, even if I'm not buying it right now.
I mean, the other thing is, another thing that I get really upset about is the fact that every single time you see a wave of something, it's usually something that you wonder, why are they making it? I mean, I keep looking on Funko's message board, and here are the two things that I always see. People want to know why there's no Pops of the Mask, and people want to know why are there no Brooklyn Nine-Nine Pops. I know that that's a newer show, and I know that it just ended. I watched that show from episode 1 all the way to the end, and I freaking loved that show. It was brilliant. I would love a Brooklyn Nine-Nine set because I loved that show. I would love to get Captain Holt, who was played by the great Andre Braugher, in the greatest way possible. I know that that would sell, but Marvel's What If, the Eternals, Marvel characters in the shapes of gingerbread cookies? I don't think so. You know what I know is really going to sell? Those Jingle All the Way Pops that are coming out in Christmas time. People are going to buy those. I have a strange feeling that they will, because I know so many people that love that movie.
Let me just end on my latest disappointment. So I was super excited about this pop because it's labeled as a movie moment, and I got it, and I was just so disappointed. So we got the boat, the scene with Jaws.
Oh.
So the boat is amazing. Don't get me wrong. There's incredible detail. I mean, you've got shark's teeth here in the front. I mean, the boat is spectacular. But sell this for what it is. It's just an enlarged Funko Mini. I mean, come on. That is a genuine Funko Mini. Every other movie moment I have has a full-size 4-inch pop. This is marketed wrong. This is marketed as a movie moment. And when your brain, as a Funko collector for all these years, goes there, you're thinking of a very large scale pop. And I understand weight, factors into this. They didn't want to make something that was super heavy. Obviously it's put together with screws and the whole 9 yards. It's very detailed. It is a beautiful pop, but that is the first thing that you're going to do as a collector, is you're going to be sorely disappointed in your pop because it is small scale. I was not the only person to have that reaction. I talked to other collectors who got this pop as well. It's beautiful. I'm glad I own it. It's going to look great on a shelf, but this was a huge disappointment because it just was marketed weird. It makes you question the future of Funko, where they're going, what they're doing. And I really feel like my collecting is coming to a close.
I definitely see mine tapering off right now. I am more so invested in comic books right now, and for good reason. Kami's also collecting a lot of comic books, and yes, as Kami being another member of That's Comical, we are planning to come back and do some really good projects very, very soon. So I am just going to now talk about, in rapid fire, some of the movies that I went to go see in theaters after theaters opened, and even some that I decided that I didn't want to go see in theaters. One, as a matter of fact, is a movie that's both me and Kami have watched. I think she's still watching it, but we'll get into that. I'm just going to go over all the movies that I went to see, because I think the last time we all sat in a room, the last movie that I saw in theaters was Black Widow. So here we go. So this was because my wife really wanted to see it. We went to see Disney's Jungle Cruise with Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, and I'm not going to deny the fact that I had a good time. I always have a good time when Dwayne Johnson's in a movie. He oozes with charisma. He's fun to watch, and he and Emily Blunt played off of each other beautifully. I want to make that absolutely clear. It's not the greatest movie you'll ever see, but if you enjoyed Pirates of the Caribbean, you're going to have that Pirates of the Caribbean vibe. The sets were fun and spectacular. The visual effects were great. It's fun. That's why you go to the movies. At least you should be going to the movies to have a good time, which is why I actually gave that movie 3 stars. I mean, I'm probably never going to buy it on DVD, but I had a good time with it. The other movie that we literally saw them back to back. We went to go see The Suicide Squad. Jen hated it because it was way too graphic for her, but we all know that the director of the movie, James Gunn, this was around the time that Disney fired him because of those tweets that he made 10 years before. And based on what the Suicide Squad was, that was basically him giving a middle finger to Disney saying, okay, you're not going to let me make your movies anymore? Let me show you what Warner Brothers lets me do. So he went balls to the wall with Suicide Squad. It is graphic. It is in your face. Nothing is held back. There is a ton of everything from blood splatter to dismemberment of limbs. And the cast is fun. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, beautiful. I love her as Harley Quinn. Even though people don't like the original Suicide Squad movie or Birds of Prey, you know what? I had fun with both of them, and she is the reason why. John Cena, ironically, another WWE persona who is now going into Hollywood. He's another great guy I enjoy watching on movies and television. He as Peacemaker was hilarious. Sylvester Stallone voicing King Shark, hilarious. Viola Davis as Amanda Waller, kills it every single time. Love the cast. The movie is great. I personally had a good time with it. I gave it 3.5 stars out of 4 because I know it's not for everybody, but I'm getting that movie on Blu-ray the minute it's coming out, and I know it's coming out very soon. So far, the best movie that I've seen in theaters, Free Guy. Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds is a joy. It is a movie that doesn't take itself seriously. It's the reason why you go to movie theaters. You want to have fun. Ryan Reynolds is fun. That movie is near perfect when it comes to entertainment value. I was so happy to hear all of these positive reviews come out of that movie. So I was very excited to see it, especially from seeing the trailers. But my wife is a big Ryan Reynolds fan. She loves Deadpool. She loves Deadpool. So we loved it. It was actually what we decided to do on the week of our anniversary, and it was worth it. We really, 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 really had a good time with Free Guy. I right now think it's the best movie of the year. It's coming out on Blu-ray and DVD literally in 2 weeks, so I cannot wait to own it, and I cannot wait to watch it again. I also did see a couple of things on Netflix. I watched the Troll Hunters movie, which of course is produced by Guillermo del Toro. I thought that it was a 3-star out of 4 film. It wasn't perfect, but it was a great way to wrap up Troll Hunters, Three Below, and Wizards. Those are the 3 Guillermo del Toro cartoons that was made by DreamWorks and Netflix. It tied it all together beautifully. It had a great ending. I was very, very, very impressed. I also did go and see the second Marvel movie that came out this year. We went to go see Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and I gotta tell you, I was immensely surprised by it. I am not surprised that it surpassed Black Widow because it's a much better movie than Black Widow. This is a great story, great characters. It gives the villains and the heroes so much character development. I personally think that it's the best Marvel movie that they've made since Captain America and the Winter Soldier. And also because of the fact that I don't know if you guys are fans, but if you're not, it's okay. But I just want to say that I love Awkwafina. I think that she is a gem, and she needs to be given more projects because she is just funny. She's got perfect comedic timing, and she is the comic relief of this movie. And I'm sure you guys remember that one of the things I didn't like about Black Widow was the jokes. I found them to be forced. With Shang-Chi, I thought that the jokes were all perfectly placed, and they came out naturally. They worked. Regardless of how many there were in the movie, they worked. I gave it a 4 stars. I thought that it was a fantastic film. I really, really did. And Kami, before we go in regard to the movie that we both sort of have been watching together, you saw Malignant. I really want to know about it.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. It's gotten mixed reviews. It's one of those that you're either going to love it or you're not. I honestly feel that this is a future B-list movie. And I say that with all due respect because it really is a B-list movie on a very high budget. There was a point where you kind of get to the plot twist. Essentially, I for those that are watching that haven't seen it, I definitely don't want to give it away because it's one of those, if you say anything about it, you're going to ruin the whole movie. When you get to the plot twist, you're like, huh? Really? Okay. And it's cheesy for about 2 minutes, and then it gets good again. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would definitely give this one 3.5 stars. I will see it again. I possibly will even look to own it. But the reason I call it the future B-list movie is because I really see somebody watching this 25 years from now going, really, that was made in 2021? Like, what the hell? But it's good. I think it's going to be one of those that is just going to kind of set the tell of time, and people are going to enjoy it 20, 30, 40 years from now. And the cinematography is beautiful. The scenery is very eerie. And I don't scare easy. I'm not a person that, goes into a horror movie expecting to ever be scared. But there were a couple scenes that left my hairs on my arms standing up. I'm like, oh shit, I wasn't ready for that one, So yeah, I definitely encourage any horror fan to give it a shot. I think it's well worth your time. Even if you walk out on the other side of things and you don't enjoy it as much as I did, I really think that you're going to get your time's worth out of it.
What's it on?
HBO Max.
Okay.
I would like to hear your idea behind it, Stacy, because it's one of those, like I said, you're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. I have a feeling I know where you're going to land, but I'm not going to say it out loud because I want to just see how you come back and tell me your details.
I did watch the Batman, The Long Halloween, so
Oh,
yeah, I didn't realize we were writing stuff down this month, so I didn't write it down, but if you want my thoughts on that.
of course we do. Kami and I are actually going to be talking about it on That's Comical, and we're also very excited to finally sit down and do our comparison to the original books. So we're excited. So tell us.
Well, my husband and I, we watched I guess it's the first part. I didn't realize you had to buy 2 different parts. Right?
Yeah, they do that a couple of times.
We watched, how many parts is it? 2? 2. Okay, so we watched the first part. I loved the animation because I am a huge fan of Batman the Animated Series. So yes. I loved the animation of it, but I think it was really slow, like super slow. And I'm like, all right, come on. Like even the way the characters were speaking to each other was slow. Like if they were on some kind of depressant or something. But I feel like the Joker was like way too hyped up. It went from being like very slow and kind of subdued. And then when the Joker came in, he was like, ah, and I'm like, calm down, dude, like calm down. Well, so it was such a like mind fuck. But yeah, I don't know if I was buying the storyline of it either. I gotta say, so far the first part of it is not my favorite. I prefer the animated series way more. Maybe I prefer it in like half an hour chunks. I don't know, but
well, if I may be so bold, and Kami will definitely back me up on this because we both have seen these movies and we also read the source material. The Long Halloween is a very atmospheric and slow burn. And yes, the Joker is exactly the way he is in the book as well. He literally takes the atmosphere and the story of Long Halloween in the comic books as well, and literally like a snow globe, he picks it up, he shakes it around, and he puts it right back down.
That's what it felt like. Like, whoa, like.
Well, that's exactly what happens, and it's interesting. It's interesting. Yeah, I would definitely say that there's a lot more of these DC animated films to choose from. And I would definitely say that do not say that will be the end all be all. There's so many other great animated movies in the DC universe that you would see. If you want to see a truly great one in that library, I highly recommend Batman Under the Red Hood. That is a fantastic film.
I was also surprised it wasn't all about Halloween.
Well, it's about it's interesting. It's interesting because the Long Halloween, and I don't even remember if it's in the first part, but it's in the comic as well. The reason why it's called the Long Halloween is because the holiday killer keeps killing people. So the mob's just constantly calling this the Long Halloween because it started on Halloween, and just this is not going to ruin the story, and it will end on Halloween. It's a whole year.
I was like, wait a minute, I thought this was Halloween, and then they were bringing in like Thanksgiving and then Christmas, and I'm like, wait, what?
That's the story. That's the story.
Okay.
The holiday killer basically kills for a whole year, so it's sort of like a real-time story as well. So yeah, I would say that when you get an opportunity to watch the second part, I think it will come together because Kami felt the exact same way about the movie because she read the comic first, and she loves the comic, by the way.
Okay.
And it's just going to feel more complete when you get both parts together and are able to watch them back to back.
Okay.
I think my issue with the movie was that I didn't have part 2. I had to wait a couple months for part 2 to come out, and I think had I been able to watch them back to back, because I even mentioned it to Steve, I said, why did they just put this on one movie? And he's like, a 3-hour DC movie? No, that couldn't have happened. And I'm like, I get it, but giving me this half-assed version of this story that I know is so incredible because I had already read the source material, I felt very cheated. And so when I got the second half, I was able to then watch them back to back, and it felt a lot fuller for me. But I will still say, and this doesn't happen a lot, but in this case, the storyline, the story arc, the comic is so much richer and better put together than that movie. I understand why the changes were made in the movie versus the source material. I understand why they went the direction that they went, because obviously there are some things that you do have to change for cinematic value. But I think this, if you do have the opportunity to read The Long Halloween, it's so much more enriching, and it's something that'll stay with you for a long time. It is honestly hands down one of my favorite comic series ever, and the artwork is so spectacular.
But the other interesting thing is, this is how Warner Brothers is going to make their money. In a couple of months, I'm promising you, The Long Halloween is going to come out as one movie. This is the third time they've made one of these movies that is 2 parts. They did this with Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, also a fantastic DC animated movie based on one of the greatest Batman stories in comics history. And they did the same thing with The Death of Superman and Reign of the Supermen. They literally make them, and then they combine them. And my attitude is, it started with The Dark Knight Returns. I had parts 1 and 2 separately, and when I tried to watch them as one movie, it was just too much for me. It was like, I kind of feel like I need to break them up, because when you watch these stories entirely, for cinematic value, it doesn't work because it takes so much away from the first movie. That's the way that I look at it. You know, it's like when people were saying that when the Deathly Hallows Part 2 came out, there were so many people that said, oh, it takes so much away from the Deathly Hallows Part 1, and the Deathly Hallows Part 1 is my favorite Harry Potter movie. So I could see where they were coming from.
Yeah, we're going to have to watch the second part.
I mean,
yes, you do.
I agree with you, Steve, in terms of that cinematic, value, because books and movies need to be taken differently.
Yeah.
But in terms of the story arc, I mean, for me, the comic just flowed so well, and it allotted you. I mean, granted, you're reading at your own pace too.
Yeah.
And I certainly didn't read all 13, comics in one sitting, but for the purposes of cinematic flow, I just think one movie in this case would work better, because you're dealing with a timeline of 1 year,
right,
and you're anticipating the holidays. The movie, again, they do make some changes to that, so I don't know if this case it would work, but I don't know, it kind of lost some of its ambiance because of the break for me,
Okay, well, I'm not going to disagree with you there. It literally is a tomato situation when it comes to us, and I know this is a fact, is why a lot of people, when it comes to buying comic books, they'll go straight for the trade paperback, because some people just don't want to wait for the next issue because they believe that they're going to forget it. But I'm someone that likes to collect the comic books. There are some graphic novel trades that I have only because of the fact that I know that I am going to read the living living fuck out of them. That's a definite. So when it comes to the comic books, I won't read them as often. But yes, when you actually have a whole story when it comes to comic books, yes, it's much more fulfilling rather than waiting. And I've been doing that a lot, especially you and I. We'll talk about the Department of Truth on That's Comical very soon. But yes, you know, sometimes you forget a couple of things because you had to wait a month for the next issue. So I'm with you there. Another movie that I want to recommend you, Stacy, in regards to DC animation too, as a matter of fact, if they're on HBO Max, just watch them right away. Watch Batman: The Return of the Caped Crusader, especially if you want to watch an animated take on the 1966 Batman show with Adam West and Burt Ward voicing Batman and Robin, which is wonderful, by the way.
Cool.
Oh, it's great.
I used to watch that show when I was a kid.
It is great. And the second one is actually great too, especially because of the fact that William Shatner is voicing Two-Face. It's fantastic. And you've got to watch Batman versus Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That is a fantastic movie. So speaking of HBO Max, there's a movie that's on there right now. I mean, I'm really excited. October's going to be a big movie month for me. I am definitely going to be going to see the new James Bond movie with my father, and I'm going to go see the new Dune film, which I'm hearing is really, really great. But The Many Saints of Newark, a Sopranos story, came out this weekend. And I am going to say this, and a lot of people are going to be very upset with me. I never watched The Sopranos. But
I never did either.
But I was still very interested in this movie. And I will say, this movie made me want to watch The Sopranos. I don't think that I was necessarily lost because of so many people I knew. Because remember, I was in college during The Sopranos. So I knew a lot of people who were watching The Sopranos. So I know all the names. Like, I know Junior. I know Paulie Walnuts. And I know that they were in the movie as younger selves. So, yeah, I'm going to watch the show now because I really did have a good time with this movie. I loved the fact that Ray Liotta was in it. Because if you want to talk about someone who loves his mob movies, Goodfellas is my all-time favorite. So I love the fact that he was in this movie. But, and I'm going to ask for Kami to jump in on this, I really like Michael Gandolfini. I think that he really did his father proud playing Tony Soprano as a teenager. I personally think he did a fantastic job.
He was perfect. He warmed my heart. I absolutely
think he did great.
love James Gandolfini. I'm still saddened by his passing.
Yeah.
Even just the mention of him brings tears to my eyes. He left this world way too soon. He was such a compassionate person. He did so many amazing things for our veterans behind the scenes. He was just an incredible human being. There is no other Tony Soprano. The Sopranos, hands down, one of my all-time favorite shows. I watched it in live, syndication when it was on air. I own all 6 seasons on, DVD. It's rich, it's gory, it's got a lot of Goodfellas elements to it. It's very dark, a phenomenal cast, and I enjoyed this movie. I really felt like, a lot of people are going to read into this a lot of different ways. I think that there was really no beautiful way that you could have put this together unless James was still living, because then you could have probably pieced in the future with the past kind of ambiance. But I think that what it does allow you to do is kind of get an idea of why Tony became who he was, who
Right.
his role model was. And I think for a lot of fans of the show, knowing just bits and pieces of his father and his crazy mom and the whole 9 yards, you just kind of wanted to know, how did this beautiful soul, because you do see that in Tony's character. I mean, he does have this insatiable connection to nature. He's a very loving individual, but then there's just something in him that snaps, and then he becomes this animal, this monster. And I am a huge fan of the Italian mafia. My roots to this subject go way back to when my mom used to have a coffee table book that she used to tell me, do not open that, it is not for your eyes. She would go and check the mail, and I would immediately open it and see all these horrific scenes of mobsters dead on the sidewalk. It's called Blood Letters and Bad Men, and it is my segue into true crime. That aside, I thought this was very well executed. It was very interesting to go back and to see, Paulie and Junior and everybody in their earlier days. It gave you kind of a sense of what the atmosphere was like. I did also enjoy kind of seeing the societal issues at hand. You know, they didn't back off from that. I thought that was very important too. And it was an interesting dynamic to the whole storyline. What really threw me aback, and I think where my mind has been stuck since watching it, is just how much Liva looks like Carmela. And I'm just wondering if this was intentional. I'm sure it was, because if I do recall, and it's been years, obviously, since I've seen The Sopranos. I've had many conversations about it since then, but there has been, it's brought up in multiple conversations about how Tony married his mother, and that how Carmela does have a lot of traits of Liva. And I can't get past her face. Every time I look at her in this movie, I just see Carmela. I hear her voice. I hear just the way she handles situations, the way she deals with her children. And I'm like, shit, Tony married his mom. You know, so it's an interesting dynamic, but you know, I had hoped this was maybe going to be a series, because I really think that it could have been something special, but maybe just being a 2-hour movie is all we really needed.
Yeah, and I mean, the rest of the cast is great. Leslie Odom Jr. as Harold was a great choice. I loved Vera Farmiga. I mean, like, this was a very unique take on a character for me in regards to her, because I remember her specifically from The Departed, another Scorsese classic. And I just think that everybody in that movie did a great job. I mean, did I think that it was the most perfect movie? No, I pretty much fell in the middle. I gave it 2.5 stars out of 4. But like I said, the thing that I was hoping that it was going to do is exactly what it did for me. And that is, it made me want to watch The Sopranos finally. So it's on HBO Max. I have HBO Max, so I am going to definitely watch it. But I want to recommend an HBO Max show that you guys need to watch, because I love political incorrectness to a wondrous extent. You have to watch The Prince. It's been on HBO Max for a while. It's made by one of the guys who helped create Family Guy. It is such a politically incorrect take on the royal family, and I freaking love it. There is such a great cast. It's got Orlando Bloom, Alan Cumming. It's such a great cast. Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones is in it. It's such a great idea. And I love the fact that it got so many people upset because it was, you can't make fun of the royal family. That's not right. I'm like, yes, it is. You can make fun of anything you want to. It's all done for the sake of entertainment. Just stop taking it seriously. And I love the show. It's only 12 episodes. I want more of it. Please give me more of it. And everyone I see on YouTube who has watched it also says you really should watch it, because it's actually really funny. I think that Orlando Bloom as Prince Harry is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. It really, really is.
Awesome.
I think it's great. I really, really do. And I also did, in fact, watch a couple of older movies like I always do. This is what YouTube makes me do. And, of course, some of my fan favorites for anniversary purposes. Like myself turning 40, I watched Porky's for its 40th anniversary. It's another one of those politically incorrect movies that more people need to see. And if you are an American... If you are an American Pie fan, you have no idea what you're missing, because not that American Pie is bad. Porky's is hilarious. Absolutely loved it. I also did, on a sadder note, for the 20th anniversary of 9/11, even though I watch it every year on 9/11, I watched Paul Greengrass's film United 93, and that is still one of the most powerful movies and one of the most authentic depictions of that tragic day in our country. And I'm just really glad that when Paul Greengrass was going to turn this into a movie, especially considering how soon it was after the events, the fact that he really went out of his way to talk to the survivors of the people who lost their lives, like he talked to all the family members. He says, I want to make this movie. I want to know about this person that I am going to be putting in my movie. I want to know, like, what was this person's traits? What was this personality? The fact that he got the actual air traffic controllers who were doing their job that day to reprise their roles on that actual day. It is one of the most authentic horrible things to watch, but you watch it because you know that this is something that happened. We cannot forget it. And the fact that we now have an entire generation living in this world right now that was not alive to know that this has happened, we need these things. Unfortunately, they're hard to watch, but this is why they're here.
You are right. There are a lot of people that were born as this, was transpiring and have no recollection other than what they've been told in school. I do highly recommend the Netflix. It's a small docuseries called Turning Point, because it does kind of take us back, and it takes us through the whole process of, what happened and everything that we kind of like building up to that point. But it also doesn't hold back in all the issues concerning 9/11. And so I think that's really important also for the younger generation to understand why it happened, what we did wrong, and kind of where we left off. So I highly recommend Turning Point. It was a great docuseries.
And I watched 2 old movies for the very first time, and I have to say that I was somewhat disappointed with both of them. I saw Logan's Run. I found it to be very creative, but I didn't truly enjoy it. But I understand that maybe it's just because it was a movie that was made in the 1970s, a little bit honky-tonk. So what can I tell you? It is what it is, but it definitely is one of those landmark science fiction movies that pretty much drove science fiction to what it is these days in movies. And I don't know if you both saw this movie, but I will definitely say that I was extremely disappointed with it. I finally saw The Natural with Robert Redford, and I hated it. I think that I thought it was supposed to be this beautiful, glorious movie about baseball, and it was a completely different movie, and I did not enjoy it at all. I mean, I thought the acting was solid, but Logan's Run got a 2.5 stars out of 4 from me, and The Natural got 2 stars out of 4 from me. I mean, I was really upset with The Natural. I mean, for crying out loud, you would expect a movie that The Simpsons parodies to be a great movie, and I was really, really disappointed with that. So I already know that I told Kami about what I'm watching for Halloween. I am finally going to be watching Martin Scorsese's Cape Fear, so I'm really hoping that movie does. I am really hoping that movie does not disappoint me, and Kami is telling me it will not.
It's good.
I'm sure it is. I'm excited to watch it.
One of the best.
Okay,
I just watched the black and white Dracula, the original Dracula.
Oh, from 33 with Bela Lugosi?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Have you ever seen, by the way, Tim Burton's movie Ed Wood?
No.
Okay.
One of my absolute favorite movies of all time, highly underrated, and every horror lover needs to watch it.
Okay.
I ask you that because of the fact that it has Martin Landau playing Bela Lugosi. So if you are a fan, I know you are a fan of these types of movies. I'm sure you're a big Tim Burton fan. Yeah. What Kami just said is everything that I was going to tell you. It is one of Tim Burton's truly most underappreciated movies. It is one of Johnny Depp's best performances ever. You are going to love this movie.
All right, I'll watch it.
I think you'll enjoy it, and we'd love to hear your follow-up.
I'll watch it, yeah.
Yes.
So before we officially conclude, we have one more thing to talk about from Kami. Kami is watching 90210 from the beginning.
Ooh, I love that show.
So you guys know I turned 40 in July, and so my birthday present from my parents was the entire series of 90210. 90210 is a unique series for me because I was actually too young when the series first debuted on air. I was still in grade school, and so of course my mom didn't let me watch it. Well, middle school. But when I got to high school, they had kind of transitioned into college, and I had a crush on, Luke Perry and kind of Jason Priestley. Jason Priestley was kind of more of my movie guy, but Luke Perry had my heart. And so my mom was like, you know what, just go ahead, you can watch it. And so I did start watching it. Obviously, I was a little bit late into the storyline. I think I started watching it about end of season 4, maybe season 5. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to power through it and watch it from the beginning. Holy goodness. First of all, the first 3 seasons are entirely politically incorrect. There are some things that were said that I'm like, wow, okay, I can't believe that the guys and girls were saying these kinds of things. There's some very over-the-top story arcs. There is some things that I'm really surprised we just let happen. Of course, different era, different time, the way we thought, very misogynistic storylines. There's some racial lines in there that were just a little bit obscure. But it's really interesting to watch it from the beginning, see how it all unfolded, watch the romances. I mean, because it really is a drama, you know, it's a teen drama. And this really was the setup for stories like The OC and, you know, future things that I enjoyed watching. But there's just so much fun in doing it. So
yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
I always say that I actually did watch a couple of episodes only because of the fact that everybody was telling me that this is the show where Kelly Kapowski became a whore. So yeah.
I watched it as it was coming out because I was like their age.
Yeah, well, because the class graduated in '92, so yeah, that definitely puts it in line. But yeah, watching Kelly Kapowski turn into this just gutter slut is a little intense. But I'm sure that she probably told Aaron Spelling, make this character as anti-Kelly as it can possibly be, because I'm really tired of living in her shadow, and that's what you get. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's been interesting to go back also and see how many of those hairstyles I used to have, how many of those fashion faux pas I've made over the years. And it kind of makes me want to just get some spandex leggings and put them under jean shorts with some slouch socks just for the hell of it. Just why not?
And as far as I'm concerned, to put a bow on this, also one of the greatest theme songs in television history.
Hands down. Yes, absolutely.
And that is going to wrap up another episode of The Old, the New, and the Awesome. There was a lot to take in, but that's just because of the fact that we had a lot to catch up on. So I am so glad that you guys got back together with me for this little show. I will say that before we got together a couple of days ago, I was talking to Kami about how I've been feeling a little bit solemn because I felt that things were just so overwhelming, and this is exactly what I needed. So I just want to conclude to the both of you, just to say thank you for doing this. This makes me feel a hell of a lot better. So I'm hoping that you all will appreciate this as well, and we will see you in the next one. If you enjoyed the video you just watched, feel free to leave a comment. Also, feel free to subscribe if you want to be up to date with our latest videos. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you in the next one. Actions speak louder than words.